Hello. Hello to my friends, family, and audience in India, America, and abroad. I'm back with my next episode. So instead of talking about the three leftist movements in American history, instead, I wanted to talk about a little idea which was introduced in many books and among many political and spiritual leaders. So here we go. Here I'll discuss it here. It is called The Enlightenment Gamble. Will we bet on men in the 21st century? By Sunny Sharma, Season 9, Episode 12, June 28th, 2026. American society is currently in the midst of its third reconstruction, a technological revolution of tremendous importance that will redefine many industries, which will impact how working class people will make a living in the 21st century. Not only has this restructuring of society been occurring for some time, but humanity has faced many profound existential crises for time immemorial. All of these crises, whether they were defined by a crisis of conscience or a crisis of civilization, are directly related to the need to regulate the spirit of avarice that has contributed to the immense gap in resources and wealth between the haves and have-nots. The modern era has been defined by immense development leading to a degeneration of community, an exaltation of profit to the detriment of real social ties, a resignation to complacency instead of real political engagement, a preservation of individualism concerning the gospel of wealth and entrepreneurship instead of collective solidarity through real organizing, and an ongoing effort over centuries to replace man with machines in the modern era. So, why must we bet on men, and how did the Enlightenment era define him? The phrase betting on men is in no way meant to exclude women. The use of the phrase is used to describe the original letters and spirit of the political and legal applications of the term man as it applied to multiple Enlightenment thinkers, particularly in the 18th century to early 20th century. Describing this concept is an act of hope because if I'm honest with myself, I recognize the inherent value of this phrase but do not fully comprehend its implications for society. The very legitimacy on which our rights are based is, quote, betting on men. It is not merely the responsibility taken by the vanguard of any true social movement, it is the very conscience of this vanguard and the unwritten spirit of the law undergirding our civilizational systems of laws. Describing this phrase is an effort in abstraction to some degree. As John Adams described at the founding of America, it is not a country of men that we desire, but a society of laws. I think Adams was right, but the way in which the founding generation applied and used language differed concerning the situation and circumstances they encountered. That is why they debated so fiercely and still were unable to agree nor manifest the true vision of America that would have benefited everyone from the meekest and humblest to the most empowered and grandest. So, why should we bet on men? America truly never lived up to its founding creed, despite the many watershed moments in American history when we all felt something was going to change and in a big way. Spiritual and political leaders alike have spoken to the moral poison in our society caused by the dual civilizational crisis and crisis of conscience slash against the inner life of man that has been occurring for centuries, marked by three turning points in American history. The landing of Christopher Columbus in America in 1492 in what is called today the Dominican Republic, the first importation of slaves to the American colonies in 1619 in Jamestown, Virginia, and most importantly, the founding of the American Republic in 1776. For clarification's sake, this is from a Western civilizational viewpoint. This affirmation of betting on man is not a completely comprehensive view of global history, even if it does apply to every newly independent country for a very simple reason. The constitutional system of America was the framework for nearly every new nation state during and after the late 18th century. While the discovery of America indicated the slow and steady decline of native populations and culture, and the 1619 importation of slaves to Jamestown, Virginia, in hindsight, contributed significantly to the idea of liberty addressed in the founding documents for the 1776 American Republic and for posterity, the Declaration of Independence, drafted and signed on July 4, 1776, wasn't just an affirmation of rights and grievances, as well as being a military document. It was an immense gamble that was staked by a group of representative delegates who were unsure about the future outcomes of their bet. The quote, first American founding generation was staking their bet on the inherent manhood of every person, constituted by the dual duty and privilege incorporated in citizenship and worker. Being a citizen and worker as a man corresponds to abiding by the duty to not merely work out one's own private political salvation, but to be obligated to work for the collective political liberty of all people. Such political maturation draws a sharp distinction between youth and adulthood, an idea that was built upon by generation after generation, especially during the era of union labor struggle from 1880 to 1940, after the formation of such groups as the American Federation of Labor, Knights of Labor, etc. The collective solidarity of past generations was only possible through the men and women who understood only through their duty towards helping others would they be able to provide an inherent meaning to their struggle, whether it was racial equality, social equality, participatory equality, or the perhaps unreachable economic equality. Through this inherent meaning, not only would their rights be legitimized, but so also would there be a protection of such rights for the community and society as a whole. The very citizenship that is a part of betting on men requires an act of faith when one exercises their central rights, especially the right to vote. Voting to many people doesn't seem logical, and they're right to feel somewhat ambivalent about a process that frequently doesn't lead to immediate, short-term tangible benefits. What every citizen has to remember are our founding ideals and those who died in their defense. Although it was not articulated initially in the 19th century, one of those founding ideals intrinsically tied to both the preservation of liberty and achievement of economic security was the right to vote, also called franchise. It is with black ink that such rights were outlined for posterity, but what is required is the recognition of leaders who abide by a higher faith through a self-mastery of themselves. This means following leaders who, although respect the letters of past generations, they live and endure life as a testament towards creating a better world, as men whose veins and conscience are not bound by the black letter. Rather, they are filled with the red blood spilled by past generations that opposed oppression's gun, so we never had to. The right to vote is indeed a mere piece of paper of black ink, but it was fought for by generations of spilled red blood. Moreover, it was an achievement that involved, quote, betting on men. Not only a higher faith, but a very uncertain hope in the face of crises. It was the imperative of citizenship struggled for by generation after generation through the daring and courage of millions of people from all walks of life, especially fueled by the efforts of a multi-faith, multiracial, and poor groups of people. Chivalry was a product of the marginalized and oppressed before it was undermined by those who had no interest in improving the system for anybody, let alone the meekest and humblest citizens. This obligation was directly related to the responsibilities of men to protect the weak and shepherd the lost and forgotten from local sanctuaries to distant lands. Yet, quote, betting on men is an act of hope Yet, quote, betting on men is an act of hope, something which I personally learned over the years. Humanity has the answer to their problems well before the evidence is fully recognized or acknowledged. We make a mistake by waiting for full consensus before embarking upon a journey, whether it is one of self-discovery or a political enterprise. Our empathy and intuition, guided by conscience, indicates the right direction to take, even in the face of fear and potential disastrous consequences. In a recent 2026 American Revolutionary documentary, it was clear that the American founding generation of the Enlightenment era, which did include some enlightened men, signed the Declaration of Independence with both a sense of joy and fearful trepidation. They understood that their struggle for liberation against the British Empire was also a struggle for the reclamation of the human personality. I thank you for listening to my podcast, and I'll be back with a future podcast. Thank you.